Tetris, and Getting My Girlfriend Addicted to Tetris. Published on my website, accordionsprout.com, 30th of September, 2024. Searching for the word Tetris on Google will result in 92,900,000 search results. Searching for Pac-Man produced 91,200,000 results. That's a difference of 1,700,000 search results. I didn't compare these results against Bing, because I have standards, and a soul. These search results will be important later in this essay. On a related note, I got my girlfriend addicted to Tetris. Here's how it happened. I played a lot of Tetris. That's it. That's how easy it was. Now, I don't mean to suggest by that sentence that my girlfriend is stupid or easily swayed or manipulated. Anything but. I say this in full honesty in her favor. The woman could probably convince a freight train to turn around and move in a different direction if she spotted a cute bug on the track and didn't want it to get smushed. That's the level of her conviction and personal integrity. What I hope to convey in that sentence, as well as in the rest of this essay, is that Tetris is a video game that has an infectious quality that would make the bubonic plague and COVID-19 blush. And it's due in no small amount to the fact that the game is an abstract masterstroke that scratches a deeply psychological itch. It's also, and this is important, really fun to play. Tetris is an abstract action puzzle video game originally created by Alexei Pajitnov, a Russian programmer who formerly worked for the Soviet Academy of Sciences as a speech recognition researcher. There is no plot or setting to Tetris. The game opens in an empty rectangular space, and geometric forms composed of a series of squares called tetrominoes begin to fall from the top of the screen. Players can, using buttons on gamepads or keyboards, turn these pieces at 90-degree angles in order to try and fill horizontal rows within empty space. The goal is to line these pieces together in complete horizontal lines. Once a line has been constructed, it will disappear and the player will be rewarded points, and the more rows that are completed at once will increase the points earned. The challenge of the game is that the player has no control which tetrominoes will appear as they play, meaning that particular pieces may not be advantageous for completing a row, and the player has to decide where to move this piece so as not to create any gaps. Likewise, as the game progresses, the speed at which the tetrominoes drop increases, giving the player less time to turn them the right way before they land and another one appears. The most important aspect of Tetris, however, is that a game does not stop until the tetrominoes are stacked all the way to the top. This is to say, Tetris doesn't stop until the player loses. The implication of this becomes obvious. There is no way to, quote, win at Tetris. Which then begs the question, why would anyone play Tetris? And why is it still being played today? I suspect one reason is because Tetris is a game in the most pure and abstract sense. Take the plot of Final Fantasy VII, one of the most popular video games of all time. The plot of the game is that Cloud Strife, an ex-soldier, is working as a mercenary and becomes tangled in the plot of the eco-terrorist organization Avalanche, who is blowing up the power generators of the Shinra Corporation. Avalanche is trying to stop Shinra from draining all of the Mako, life essence, from the planet and creating an environmental apocalypse. During the second mission, the group is attacked and separated, and Cloud meets a young woman named Eris, in the original, who is, we later learn, one of the last of an ancient race of organisms that inhabited the planet centuries ago and is being hunted by Shinra who wish to study her. During a rescue operation, the group encounters a former soldier known as Sephiroth, who is a bioengineered super soldier who has gone insane after discovering the truth of his origin and is working to have a meteor collide into the planet. Tetris is about moving blocks of squares together to form lines. I'm using this context to note that Final Fantasy VII is a crazy, bonkers, brilliant fantasy cyberpunk adventure and incredibly brilliant and emotional story. It's also a reminder that it's difficult to just hop into the game while I'm riding a bus to work or waiting in line at the DMV. Tetris, as a game, is not devoid of emotional potential, but it provides a simpler interface that fosters abstract thought and play. When I'm playing Tetris, my concern is not the emotional weight of the choices I'm making or the nuances of roleplay dynamics. I'm simply trying to move tiles in proper order to avoid gaps. There's an ease of access to Tetris that is at the core of its appeal to players. Like a game of checkers or that Cracker Barrel peg game, Google it, Tetris can start and stop without any emotional investment. And truthfully, I can't say I've ever been emotionally invested in Tetris. I have been intellectually obsessed with it, and clearly I haven't been the only one. Researching for this essay, I found an article published on Wired magazine titled "This Is Your Brain on Tetris" by Jeffrey Goldsmith. Published the 1st of May 1994, the article explored the neurochemical process that takes place in the human brain while playing a game like Tetris. Goldsmith writes, "In first-time users, Tetris significantly raises cerebral glucose metabolic rates, GMRs, meaning brain energy consumption soars. Yet after 4 to 8 weeks of daily doses, GMRs sink to normal, while performances increase 7-fold on average. Tetris trains your brain to stop using inefficient gray matter, perhaps a key cognitive strategy for learning. In fact, the lowest final GMRs are found in the best players' brains, the ones most efficient at dealing with Tetris's Daedalian geometry. The elevated GMR high is why you get wired after hours of play. Your old dog of a brain learns the Tetris trick by munching cerebral glucose. Neural hoop jumping seems to be streamlined until performance peaks, and then your old dog stops craving milk bones. The Tetris effect is a biochemical, reductionistic metaphor, if you will, for curiosity, invention, the creative urge. To fit shapes together is to organize, to build, to make deals, to fix, to understand, to fold sheets. All of our mental activities are analogous, each as potentially addictive as the next. How a poet's mind struggles to compose a phrase is equivalent to how an engineer frets, we hope, over a new concept in bridge suspension, or how a neat freak invents infinite corners to dust, or how anyone gazes into perpetual motions in liquid crystal." That concludes the end of the quote, and I will make sure to post a link to Goldsmith's article in the description section below. Several years after this article was published, the video game developer and critic Tim Rogers offered his own take on the intellectual impact of the play on his website actionbutton.net. Published on the 5th of November 2009, the article, simply titled Tetris, tries to offer explanations and observations about the appeal of Tetris as a video game and how it lodges itself into the depths of a player's brain. Near the end of the article, Rogers writes, "What captivated the greater portion of the human race when it came to Tetris was the fact that simply playing it, staring down death between those cold walls, maybe, definitely dropping pieces in time to the bouncy Russian-like music if you were playing it on Game Boy, was an experience in learning something about yourself. As you made mistakes and faced them session and session again, you grew more and more intimate with some kind of emerging pseudo-consciousness. Riding a train, relaxing on a cruise ship, waiting for an airplane to take off, or killing time in the din, Tetris can remind us of where we are and what vehicle we may be riding or about to ride. It's the closest average human will get to feeling the way Garry Kasparov felt when declined a rematch against Deep Blue. It's a pretty excellent feeling, for what it's worth, and it certainly deserves a place on our list of the best games of all time." I'm going to interrupt the recording here to note that's the end of the quote. I will make sure to post a link to Tim Rogers' essay as well, and I did not try to do an impression of Tim Rogers' voice because that would be, to quote the teenagers these days, hashtag cringe. I'm assuming kids still use hashtags. Anyway, back to the essay. I'll be honest, the first intellectual impression or lesson I've ever acquired from playing an hour or more of Tetris has typically been an appreciation that I'm in my 30s. I'm no longer a child, which means I can basically do whatever I want with my free time and money. And if I want to spend it on something like an hour of video games and a pizza, then no one can stop me. It's a gas, and I can't imagine ever wanting to be a kid again. But after this first thought, I do admit that Tetris has been an intellectual obsession, and not just because of the cool math that makes up the process of playing the game. Starting a game of Tetris, and then playing even just for 5 minutes, I recognize a familiar flow state that I've encountered while playing video games throughout my existence. Moving the tetrominoes across the empty space of the board has a lovely joy of motion, but the satisfaction of placing the tile far supersedes anything else in the game. The gaps between squares become the center point of my attention, and without even having to think, I can perceive my brain formulating the structure of the bricks in my mind. Tetris becomes a building simulator. For context, when I play games like Stronghold Crusader, Pharaoh, Rise of Nations, or Sims Ant, I'll get to that one in the future, I promise, there's a comparable flow state. I begin to perceive the map as a series of squares. Buildings, roads, and structures become tetrominoes. However, at some point I recognize the divide because the latter mentioned games are about establishing stationary objects. Towers, granaries, barracks, roads, and statues I build in a traditional simulator game will not disappear unless I actively select them for destruction. Tetris pushes me to continually check those spaces because at some point the structures, or more accurately lines, will disappear, and the process will begin again. The psychological and biochemical effect of playing Tetris aside, I remain stuck on the question as to why I play and have played so much of the game. Looking at most of the video games I spend my time and energy on, a majority of them are action-based, meaning that I'm controlling some avatar and moving through a fictional reality because I'm either following a story, engaging in some sort of action-adventure, or because I'm solving puzzles in 3D or 2D space. Whether it's games like Portal 2, Super Mario Bros. 3, Alice Madness Returns, Fallout 4, Red Dead Redemption 2, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Doom, or even flipping Capybara Spa, all of these video games involve moving human, humanoid, or animal sprites for the purpose of arriving at a goal. Excuse me, something happened to my mouth there in the last corner. I'm going to try the last part of that sentence again. Moving human, humanoid, or animal sprites for the purpose of arriving at a goal. There, didn't mess that up. The joys of these games are about working towards that goal, and even when the game is, quote, over, there's a satisfaction in knowing I can start again and enjoy that process. With Tetris, there is a tremendous amount of satisfaction in the process, but unlike the previous games that engage me through a narrative structure, Tetris is purely abstract. It's a puzzle video game about structuring reality until it disappears. Tetris could be a, quote, death simulator in some respects, but that title doesn't accurately fit the mental perception I have of the game. In fact, if I'm being honest, a more accurate descriptor would be life simulator. Hear me out. The act of participating in reality, whatever the flip that actually is, involves navigating the structures and energies around me. I wake up in my bed, which is a rectangle, and get up. Depending on the day, I either make coffee and start to write or draw for several hours, or else I get dressed in my professional ensemble and go to the public library where I work. This job involves turning on a computer, answering emails for coworkers, helping patrons find books, and giving them directions to the computer lab. I work on research requests in the local history room. I process and index obituaries published in the local newspaper. I listen to patrons who are annoyed or angry or happy or excited about the events in their life. I make copies of informative pamphlets for using library resources. I help kids find Minecraft books, because Minecraft is awesome. I notarize documents, and at the end of the day, I clock out, come home, and try to write or draw for a few hours before going to bed. If I don't do that, I play video games or read a book, often about video games or histories about gay people. Looking at this list, my brain performs the exercise of arranging these tasks and actions into abstract shapes that may or may not resemble tetrominoes. Certain tasks possess philosophical shapes like straight lines, a bent S, or even a square. As these tasks fall down, I try my best to recognize them for what they are and then arrange them as best I can within the rectangle of my day. I try to make sure that these tasks have order, but inevitably the same recurring shape disrupts the flow, and before I realize it, the shapes have created gaps that I have to address, or at least try to. But anyone who has lived in reality knows that tasks and actions don't stop, because there's also activities like grocery shopping, getting the car fixed, calling your mother because she worries about you, doing laundry, taking pets to the vet, meeting that person you met at the grocery store to go miniature golfing, washing dishes, and calling the credit card company back because You know you didn't buy $500 worth of hummus at a Trader Joe's in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Fun fact, there ain't even a Trader Joe's in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. I Googled it. No matter how well I try to navigate these tasks, there will be gaps that will form. As much as I would like to tell myself I will have time to work back to those tasks, anyone who's been alive for more than 26 years knows that time does not slow down. In fact, the precious seconds that began this game will seem like milliseconds as more and more actions begin to stack together. I was 8 years old playing Super Mario All-Stars on my parents' Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and before I realized what happened, I was 35 and playing Tetris on my Nintendo Switch. And there's still more tasks, actions, and tetrominoes to organize. I hope this poorly executed metaphor at least gives some insight into how Tetris scratches the psychological itch that it does. Like I noted at the beginning of this essay, Tetris doesn't stop. It doesn't end. There is no way to, quote, beat the game. Players can only play and experience Tetris, achieving small victories over time. Even the most hardcore player who can play Tetris for hours is still never going to be able to beat the game because there is no way to beat Tetris. Tetris is like experiencing life and reality. There's no possible way to complete that experience. Except maybe to die. But while we're living, I'd like to go back briefly to Tim Rogers' essay about Tetris because the start of his essay offers another important insight into the game. Rogers writes, Tetris has been released in probably more versions than ice cream has ever had flavors. We are artistic, though not nearly autistic enough to list every version of Tetris that has ever been made. For the purpose of this review, we're going to, quote, imagine a certain variety of Tetris. We put imagine in quotation marks like that because for all we know, this version actually does exist somewhere. Come to think of it, it would be terrible and presumptuous to think that it doesn't. Tetris is a game where you always lose. In Tetris, the closest you get to feeling like you've won anything at all is when you narrowly prevent yourself from losing. Tetris is a grim exercise in death education. It is an unchanging, unflinching, unfeeling opponent. A greater percentage of the world's population has played Tetris than has played any other game in the history of games. We can't prove this. We can, however, feel it. Let's put it into easy words. Tetris is the most popular game that has ever existed. That's the end of the quote. Apart from the soul-crushing realization that I will never in my life write a sentence as perfect as the first line of his essay, I find Rogers' observation about Tetris beautiful. It's a wonderful human observation about a software program that, literally decades after it was first created, still manages to inspire dedication, addiction, psychological turmoil, and most importantly, comfort in players who enjoy the game. I mean it literally when I write that Tetris is iconic. It's iconic the way Pac-Man is iconic, at which point my opening sentence has hopefully become relevant. The success of both of these games, both of which are about moving icons within the confines of a rectangle, are extraordinarily popular video games that are still being played because they appeal to something deeply relevant to the human mind and soul. Though, as my research results noted, Tetris is more popular. Moving Pac-Man through the maze and eating pellets and fruits revolutionized the video game medium in no small part because it appealed to everyone and not just a portion of the population. Girls. I meant girls. Girls loved Pac-Man as much as boys did. Toru Iwatani designed Pac-Man in such a way that it didn't matter who played the game. Anyone could enjoy it and identify with the characters and visuals. That sentence messed up. Let's try this again. Toru Iwatani designed Pac-Man in such a way that it didn't matter who played the game. Anyone could enjoy it and identify in the characters and visuals something about themselves. Alexei Pajitnov, several years later, approached his own game with a similar mindset. Humans played, and humans continue to play Tetris because of its universal appeal. Tetrominoes trigger something in my own mind that I recognize as far older than myself. It's the very concept of play and creativity. Life is many things, But one of the defining qualities of humanity is imagination and the way it allows the species to engage with reality beyond the basic needs of survival and reproduction. In this space between the biological extremes, there has been play and the desire to play. Tetris fits perfectly between those two states, like the piece we've needed desperately for the last few minutes to clear the line, allowing us to develop more complicated and nuanced varieties of play. I don't want this essay to end in abstract philosophy, because there's already so much of that in the conversations that surround Tetris, especially in this essay. Instead, I'll end with a personal anecdote, which I think goes a long way to demonstrating Tetris's impact. One night, several months before I wrote this sentence, I was sitting on the couch playing Tetris on my Nintendo Switch while my girlfriend sat next to me scrolling through Facebook. I was having a rough match, there were several gaps already, and I moved the T-shaped tetramino into the line I was making. As soon as the blocks had landed, I heard a small followed by my lovely, beautiful, and intelligent girlfriend who said, "You did that wrong." I could only respond with, "What do you mean I did that wrong?" She responded with, "You should have shifted it sideways and placed it along the left-hand side. It would have given you a better position to start stacking the blocks and set up 4 rows. The woman who had never even heard of Tetris before she started dating me had, in the space of just a few months, become a seasoned player, and I was left bumfuzzled at her progress. And frustrated, because, much as it pains me to admit, she was right. She always is. And I lost that game a few seconds later. Joshua Jammer Smith, 30th of September, 2024. Howdy, I'm Jammer. Wow, holy cow, this was a long essay. Honestly, it's one of my more recent ones, and I've started noticing that I guess my confidence is getting better because my essays are starting to get longer, and I'm worried I'm starting to sound far more academic than I'm comfortable with. But before I start chatting too much, let's go over the basic stuff, which as always is you. First of all, holy cow, you. Whoever you are, wherever you are, you listened to an entire essay about Tetris when you could have been watching funny shorts on YouTube. You rock. Thank you. Seriously, I don't say it enough. Thank you. Whoever you are, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. Likewise, if you like the channel, please like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. It helps the channel because of algorithms, stuff, whatever. Honestly, it just helps me because it makes me see, hey, people watch these, they're enjoying them, they find them fascinating, or they just needed something to listen to while they're folding laundry. I tend to watch or catch up on old episodes of Critical Role while I'm folding laundry. So, hey, no hate whatsoever. I appreciate it. And then finally, too, if you enjoy the channel, or if you enjoy my visual art, or if you enjoy the writing these essays are based, or these recordings are based on, please feel free to check out the description section where my Patreon is. It's patreon.com/jammerdraws. It is $1 a month. That is the only tier that I have because, well, when it comes to Patreon, I treat it kind of like a street musician playing. If you like the sounds, if you like the work, throw a buck in my hat. Anything and everything will be appreciated. Now, I'll try to keep this as short as I possibly can because, again, the essay has already gone very, very long in its original content, and I've said basically everything that I need and want to say about Tetris so far for this essay. I'll just note the essays that I quoted here, like I noted, I'll make sure to post Goldsmith's essay. It's from 1994, and it's about neuropsychology, or no, excuse me, what is it? You know what? It's about the brain. And it was published in 1994, which is not to say that it is no longer relevant, but it is at this point a 20-year-old essay, and there has been literally mountains of research about the brain, the nervous system, what have you. So feel free to read it. It's a great article, but recognize at that point that there has probably been a lot more research done since that point. Likewise, I've also quoted a lot of Tim Rogers because I freaking love that dude. I'm obsessed. He's one of the reasons why I started writing about video games. So, if you haven't checked out his website, actionbutton.net, or checked out his YouTube channel, Action Button, definitely check it out because, God, dude just rocks. Like, I love his work. I will watch his videos over and over and over again. But anyway, Tetris. Why should we talk about Tetris? Well, because, as the first sentence noted, 92,900,000 search results on Google alone. That means 92 million instances of people employing Tetris somewhere on a website. Some of it, a fair amount of it, talking about Tetris. Some of it being blogs about Tetris. Probably some of it just being photo collections of Tetris. And then some people who probably just typed the word Tetris into some other aspect of a blog or an essay, what have you, and the search results popped up. But the numbers speak for themselves. And I brought in Pac-Man for comparison because in terms of when you're talking about video games, and especially foundational video games, Tetris and Pac-Man are so iconic, they are so abstract, but they really embody the very concepts of play themselves in regards to interactive media. In this essay, I tried my best to try to understand why I have been obsessed with Tetris as long as I have been playing it, and why there have been so many different versions of Tetris, and I've actually actively been trying to play more versions of Tetris because there's so many different versions of it. It's one of the most playable games that have ever been made because it's so simple. It doesn't require advanced emotional energy to play it, or excuse me, it doesn't require an emotional investment into it. It doesn't require advanced understanding of game controls. Just about anybody, if you gave them Tetris, even like a little Game & Watch Tetris, it wouldn't take them long to figure it out. There's just something innate about this game. For all the reasons that I have already discussed here, it's about life, it's about building, it's about creativity, it's about death, it's just about playing. And there's something really incredible about this game. It's so deceptive in its simplicity. But even the basic Game Boy version, which is where I use all of my visual samples for this essay as well as the video as well, there's still something to it. There's something to the energy of the game itself. Tetris is a game you experience, you play it, and you just lose yourself completely in it. And this isn't a bad thing at all. In fact, it's a beautiful thing. Probably one of the closest I have ever come to kind of just pure mindfulness in video games, apart from a couple of instances while playing Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, is Tetris. So, before I continue to ramble, I recognize I'm already now at 5 minutes, and I promised this would be short. There's just so much to Tetris, and I don't think I even covered half of it in this essay. So, keep your eyes peeled. I guarantee you there's going to be more essays about Tetris in the future, assuming I can keep this going, passion, energy, work, life, what have you. And I have a girlfriend. I know, I can't believe it either, but occasionally she likes to spend time with me, and, you know, she's cool with me playing video games, but sometimes she wants to go plant shopping, which is, you know, it's fun. But point is, keep your eyes peeled. There will be more Tetris in the future. There will, I promise. And with that, thank you so much for listening. I tremendously appreciate it. Go play some video games.